Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Jarod Facundo, writing fellow at the American Prospect, on rural letter carriers' fight for a new union. Then Dr. Sara Nur Yildiz, professor of history at the Middle East Technical University in Ankara, Turkey, on what just happened in Nagorno-Karabakh. Also on the program today, in the wake of Biden's historic visit to the UAW picket line, Trump visits workers in Michigan to push anti-unionism. Speaking of Donald Trump, Trump Inc. found to have committed fraud in New York State in what amounts to almost like a summary judgment. Right. Prima facie. Still more charges extant. In Las Vegas, hospitality workers vote to authorize a strike. That means I may not be eating or drinking while I'm there a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, the WGA East and West vote to end the strike. A ratification vote by the greater membership will start on Monday. Federal Trade Commission and 17 states sue Amazon for massive antitrust violations. And the now Democratic-controlled FCC begins the process to bring back net neutrality. Senate reaches a continuing resolution deal, but House unlikely to go for it. And tonight's the night, ladies and gentlemen. Republican debate at 9 p.m. Eastern from Ronald Reagan's crypt. Sadly, again, the debate will be missing one of its most dynamic candidates. Asa Hutchinson will not be there tonight. Federal judge finds Texas's drag ban unconstitutional, and California has just doubled taxes on guns and ammo and banned firearms in public places. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. A lot to get to today. Going to be a long day for us here in the Majority Report studios. It is, in fact, Hump Day. Emma will be here tonight for the debate. Hump Day actually will be bleeding into Hump Night. Matt and Bradley planning their plans for a work stoppage, having pulled triple shifts today. But we will be covering the debate live tonight, starting probably around 8:45. You don't want to miss this. The charisma of Ron DeSantis, the stylings of Vivek, sounds like cake.
Who has more fraud stuff coming out, apparently.
Oh, there's more fraud around him?
It's weird.
That's weird. Chris Christie, America's most lovable governor. Nikki Haley. Who else do we have? Burgum.
Bergamentum.
And do we have anybody else? I think that's it, right? 6? Did I just say 6? No, Asa Hutchinson gone.
Well,
I think that's it. I think it's just 6. But nevertheless, this is it's the JV team.
You said Pence?
Oh, Mike Pence. How could I have forgotten? Mike Pence.
I thought he was dead.
There he is. So tune in. It should be fun. And I'm going to, I've got a lot of alcohol here.
Got a real big supply, actually.
Yep, we're going to be locked in. So we'll get to that. Meanwhile, really stunning. Yesterday, when we were talking about the UAW strike and Joe Biden's visit to the picket line, we outlined just how much the press, like almost in a bizarre fashion, seems to be so hell-bent on making it seem like Donald Trump is heading to support striking workers when he's going to a non-union auto parts supply company, which has been set up and promoted by a right-wing organization that promotes anti-unionism and right-to-work legislation. All of which has been confirmed at this point. And it's not like, it's just us saying this. I saw, Chris Hayes was interviewing Greenhouse, the former labor reporter from the New York Times. They walked through all of this, and still you see AP and CNN writers claiming that Trump is going to support striking workers. It's bizarre. This was a one-on-one with Sean Fain on CNN last night with Wolf Blitzer. They're showing a Donald Trump, put up the thing here, a Donald Trump truth post or whatever it is. Joe Biden's draconian, indefensible electric vehicle mandate will annihilate the U.S. auto industry and cause countless thousands of auto workers to lose their jobs. Let's be clear, and I think Sean Fain says it in this clip. The United Auto Workers are basically agnostic on the EV thing as long as they are protected. What we've watched the auto industry attempt to do is like what we've seen with places like Verizon, where they set up wireless as non-union. And they try and keep their union jobs just with wired telephony. And of course, we all know the future is in wireless. And the point is, we need strong unions and government mandates with this money that is coming in to support EV transitions to ensure that these remain union jobs. Here's Sean Fain.
Is the former president right? Does the push for electric vehicles here in the United States hurt your union?
It doesn't if it's a just transition, and that's what we're fighting for right now. It doesn't if the companies do the right thing and put this work under, our agreements or to our standards. And again, it's the companies driving this race to the bottom, and they're using our tax dollars to finance it. And, I find a pathetic irony that the former president is going to hold a rally for union members at a non-union business. And, all you have to do is look at his track record. His track record speaks for itself. In 2008, during the Great Recession, he blamed UAW members. He blamed our contracts for everything that was wrong with these companies. That's a complete lie. In 2015, when he was running for president, he talked about doing a rotation, taking all these good-paying jobs in the Midwest and moving them somewhere in the South where people will work for less money, and then to make people beg for their jobs back at lower wages. And the ultimate show of how much he cares about our workers was in 2019 when he was the president of the United States. Where was he then? Our workers at GM were on strike for 60 days, for 2 months. They were out there on the picket lines. I didn't see him hold a rally. I didn't see him stand up at the picket line, and I sure as hell didn't hear him comment about it.
So here's the question.
He was missing in action.
Here's the question to President. What about the meeting with Trump? Would you meet with him when he's in Detroit tomorrow?
I see no point in meeting with him because I don't think the man has any bit of care about what our workers stand for, what the working class stands for. He serves a billionaire class, and that's what's wrong with this country.
Well,
I mean, there you go. Good for Sean Fain. Hope he's available. I would love him to run in the Democratic primary, frankly. But there it is. I mean, I think you can't have anything more explicit. Now, this is on CNN 18 hours ago. Anybody in the AP or CNN, for that matter, writing anything different? The idea that Donald Trump is somehow supporting the striking workers, he's no more supporting the striking workers than, coincidentally, I went to the bathroom today. These are non sequiturs. They're complete non sequiturs. I mean, arguably, it's the absolute opposite. You got striking workers striking at a picket line across town, and you go to a place that's non-union with auto workers.
Contradicting the demands of the leadership.
I mean,
if I'm an auto executive, I'm loving what Trump and all these folks who say like it's the government EV thing that's the problem here because it puts the emphasis away from my compensation.
Absolutely. And let's be clear, I'd like to see if there's any way that the executive can put some restrictions on these subsidies that we're paying. That's what he's talking about, subsidized by tax dollars.
Yeah. Needs to go to unions. I mean, that is the key point here is the EV transition. That needs to be unionized. On
day one.
It can't be used as a way to get out from under union contracts.
On day one. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Jarod Facundo. He's a writing fellow at the American Prospect, who's been writing about this attempt by rural letter carriers to decertify their union contingent upon finding another union because of what's been going on at the post office. And then we'll be talking to Dr. Sara Nur Yildiz, professor in history at the Middle East Technical University of Ankara, Turkey, about the incredible fall of Nagorno-Karabakh in the past, I guess, a week and a half. We'll be talking to her about that. First, a couple of words from our sponsor today, who not only is sponsoring the show, but also, well, sort of sponsoring my dinner a couple times a week, particularly when I have Saul on board. HelloFresh. I've used other services that bring ingredients to your house. HelloFresh nails it, not just with like delicious food, but also with recipes that are on the low end of effort. I don't want to make it seem like I'm not expending a lot of effort because I'm making good meals, but I just want to do it quicker. I can't spend 45 minutes. Now, they have recipes that take 40 minutes, they probably have some that are 45, I don't know, but most of them, they're like 35, 40 minutes, but they also have some that are 20 and some that are 15. And HelloFresh has constantly are updating their menus. You have a pick from 40 weekly recipes that are sort of like in different categories of lifestyle. You can have like all veggie or family friendly or like, fit and wholesome type of thing. But the beauty is you can pick like how long you want this to take and what kind of food. And it is super easy. If you go to HelloFresh.com/50majority, 50 majority, and use the code 50majority, you will get 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. This is the time to try this. Back to school time. I don't know. The end of summer. HelloFresh will deal with all of your meal planning. You look at the menu, you choose, you figure out how many days a week you want it, shows up. It is they're in discrete sort of like meal packages, which is also surprisingly very helpful. And not only that, they also have like 100 add-on items that you can choose from every week. You can get your kids lunch delivered. So, for instance, like I have made like an edamame and chickpea salad. Obviously, it takes not that much time, but it's delicious and it's filling. And I'll get like a pre-made lasagna. They have some of those as well. That takes like literally like, I don't know, 7 minutes to heat up. And I'm eyeing, even though it's going to be a 30-minute commitment, I can't get this out of my head. It's like a lemon spaghetti with Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are my favorite vegetable. So, and it's got like panko on it. Anyways, HelloFresh is more than just dinners. Like I say, you can stock up your fridge with easy breakfast, quick lunches, fresh snacks. You can shop the HelloFresh market, add any of these tasty time-saving solutions to your weekly box. This is what makes it super, super easy. You're going to save money on your grocery bill. You're going to save a lot of money if you order in a lot. You're going to be able to make fresh cooked meals, and their portions are perfect, perfectly measured. When you get HelloFresh, you know you're getting top-notch produce. It travels from the farm to your door in less than 7 days. Go to HelloFresh.com/50majority. That's 50majority. Use the code 50majority, 50majority for 50% off, plus 15% off the next 2 months. Check it out. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Jarod Facundo, writing fellow at the American Prospect. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland off today. She'll be back tonight for our coverage of the Republican primary debate. Joining us now, Jarod Facundo. He is a writing fellow at the American Prospect. And Jarod, I got to say, it is rare that I'm interviewing people about trying to decertify their union. But this is a really fascinating story. I didn't know that there were multiple letter carrier unions. And I don't know if I was really quite aware of like how not terribly effective they are. But just break it down for us. How break down the different letter carrier unions, just so we get a sense of like the overview of what exists right now.
Yeah, gotcha. So I believe there's 3 different main letter carrier unions. There's the National Association for Letter Carriers, which is typically operates in urban areas. And then there is the APWU. I'm not exactly sure what that acronym is, but it's another similar to like urban, suburban sort of stuff. And then there's the National Rural Letter Carriers Association, which is the union that I was writing about. These are post office workers who deliver in largely like rural communities, which happens to be like the majority of the country.
Right. It's a big country. And there, in May of this year, the Postal Service under Louis DeJoy, and God help me, I don't understand why that guy is still there. That's a different question. But the Postal Service adopted a new payment system. Tell us about that.
Yes, the new payment system, it's called REX, but it's like the Rural Route Evaluation Compensation System. And effectively, it was what REX does. It's like trimming labor costs, just because that is like one of the most expensive components to running the post office. And under Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, what he's doing is like really trying to buckle down the cost as much as possible. And like there's like yes, that's a completely different issue, but what's important is that Rex has been in development for about like almost a decade or a little more than a decade at this point. So the union and the post office have been going back and forth on how this is actually going to be implemented. And after several delays into what the system would become, it finally goes into effect in May. And what we end up seeing are rural letter carriers who are told that they're going to have to make some sacrifices. You're going to lose a couple hours to your route each week, but once their routes are actually adjusted, the cuts are way more than they were told by the union, and that's kind of like the source of this frustration.
Okay, and I should just say that I'm being told that the APWU stands for the American Postal Workers Union, and they don't cover letter carriers. So we really have only the two, the urban and the rural. Okay. And but with that said, how in practice, so the rural letter carriers are told by their union, this new system is basically assessing how much of your route can be basically eliminated, or that you can do this more efficiently. Which one of those is that, or is there some combination of both?
It's a combination of the two. Like it's consolidating routes. It's consolidating the number of stops onto less delivery or less carriers. So it's similar to how like a manufacturing company is going to restructure the way the way shifts are assembled. So it's no longer like a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 sort of arrangement. Now you have people going Sunday through Thursday, Wednesday to Saturday. You kind of just have these like overlapping operations in order to simultaneously do more but with less. And in the case of the post office, we don't get mail on Sunday, so they're working within a 6-day framework. I had one letter carrier tell me about how before Rex was implemented, he was working 42 hours, 6 days a week. And everything he did on that 6th day was compensated at overtime. And after Rex, he actually gains an hour, which kind of goes against some of what's been going on or some of the complaints. But that hour that he gained, it's in a 5-day time frame. So he's like completely cut out of the opportunity of being able to earn overtime.
I see. And so what was the impact of this for the majority of people in terms of were they just losing hours, or were they just simply also getting paid less for the amount of hours that they were working?
The majority of them did lose hours. Like that ranges between 4 to 7 hours, while the rural letter carriers union told them that the majority of people would only lose about an hour. So you're quadrupling the amount of time on your job you're losing.
And I mean, if it's 4 to 7 hours, you're looking at anywhere from 10 to almost 20% of your work, right? I mean, I'm presuming just a 40-hour work week even.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in the story, I talked to one rural carrier in Florida, and granted, he lost 12 hours, and we're not exactly sure how the data spits it back out where that's the result. But in his case, he's losing $15,000 a year. So, I mean, if we see that as the top end of how a rural carrier can be impacted, now let's go a couple hours less, but still the impact is huge. I mean, and we're also talking about this in the backdrop of inflation that's settling, but you also it's been a rough couple years, and just to get slapped with, you have to take these concessions.
And I would imagine that the amount of work that has to be done has increased within the context of those hours that exist, right? They're demanding a higher level of productivity, if you will, out of the letter carriers.
Correct. And I was not tipped off about this until after the piece came out, but some of the carriers, they have like questions about how, or every single part of their job, it's another data point that's going to be spit back into Rex to give them a new evaluation a couple months down the road. One example I was given was like, if you're going to imagine like an apartment complex of sorts where there's like several stops you have to technically deliver to, like how is that going to be evaluated in the way the route's designed? And because the letter carriers don't really have a peek into how this data is being used or like what the inputs are from the start, it's unclear to them how the realities of the job are reflected in the new routes, therefore compensation that they receive.
How much was the union brought into the development of this system?
So I know the union was involved with it for the majority of the time that it was like negotiated, like about a decade ago. I mean, I wasn't covering it back then, but I mean, my boss David Dayan has kind of kept up with it, and it didn't happen overnight, in other words.
Fair enough. And so, okay. And so these rural letter carriers, they essentially are told by their union, you're going to lose maybe an hour of pay, and they end up losing 4 to 7 times that on average for people. And so they start a signature collecting campaign to decertify their union. Tell us about that and I mean, we know what's behind it, and that they feel like they've been underrepresented by their union. But what are they trying to achieve here?
The main goal of this collecting signatures for a decertify petition is to be represented by a different union, and they particularly want to be represented by the Teamsters. But in the preliminary conversations they've had with like local Teamsters reps, they're very hesitant to wade into this over different reasons.
The Teamsters are hesitant, and a lot of that has to do, as far as I can tell from your piece, is because there's essentially like a no poaching compact between unions.
Yeah, exactly. So the official like no poaching, no raid agreement between the major unions includes the Teamsters, the AFL-CIO, which is like comprised of like over 40 unions, SEIU, UFCW. Like these are some of the biggest unions in the country. But what's not exactly clear is if this no raid agreement only applies to those 4 unions, or if this means that they can't they can't like poach or raid another union that's not represented a part of those. And that's kind of the conflict the people who are running the decertify campaign are running into. At this moment, the Teamsters don't really have an interest in taking them on, even though that's who the rural letter carriers want to be represented by. And I think it's reasonable why they'd want to be represented by the Teamsters. I mean, the Teamsters are coming off a huge summer with UPS. And Sean O'Brien at the top has been a very like militant leader coming out of like a reform movement of its own.
And do you have a sense of that there's a possibility that the Teamsters are basically like, in public, we cannot in any way express a desire to unionize you guys. You need to first sort of like separate from your union before we can step in? Or is it that there is a genuine lack of interest?
So I think the point you're getting at is really, really important, because if it is the case that the Teamsters don't want to step in until they get these signatures, that's complicated for the rural letter carriers, because they don't want to submit these votes or submit these signatures for a future decertification vote unless they have the guarantee of a union. So it has to be a budge either from the Teamsters when they're pretty close to reaching the around 36,000 signatures that are needed. They need 30% of the membership before it can go forward. But the decertify and our LCA people I've spoken with have told me that even if they reach that number of signatures they need to collect. They're not going to submit this because they understand what an existential threat their work would face without any sort of union agreement.
Yeah. So to be clear, these decertifiers, they want a union. They are not in any way anti-union. They are just feeling like we need a different union because this one's not effective. And they're out there trying to explain this to their fellow letter carriers that we are going to collect. It's almost like you're getting a strike authorization as opposed to, it doesn't mean you're going on strike. It means that you have the ability to, in the event that it's necessary. And these decertifiers are saying, and to be clear, like if they deliver the 33,000 signatures, and the last number I saw is that they were maybe closer to like 10 to 15,000 signatures, and they need to get these by the end of the year. Would it automatically decertify, or is there a vote to decertify after the signatures are collected?
There would be a vote to decertify after the signatures are collected. So the December deadline, that's the internal deadline the decertifiers have. Technically, they can run this out till next May. And the reason it's May is when the NRLCA's next contract expires, because if they do go forward with a decertification vote, that has to happen at the end of the current contract.
Did you have a sense that if they got to 33, let's say 34,000 signatures, that at that point they might find a union that would commit to taking them under the wing, so that in between, the time that they had achieved a certain number of signatures and the time the election happens, they will have already at least secured at least some indication of where they won't be essentially orphaned?
I think if they reach the 30% threshold, the other unions, if it's not the Teamsters, the other unions are going to have to take this seriously. It's asking a lot for a person currently represented by a union to express interest in decertifying their union. That threat should not be taken lightly. And honestly, from the NRLCA's response, I think they understand the stakes of what reaching that 30% threshold means. Because right now, the union's leadership, they're entirely focusing on how these union members would be left without a union in the case of decertification, which is the main point that these decertifiers are trying to clarify, that we are not going to do anything unless we have the backing of another one. So
in other words, union leaders right now are fighting this effort to collect signatures by making it seem like you're going to be without a union, period, if you decertify, as opposed to the introduction of the idea of they're actually shopping for a different union as opposed to no union.
Yeah, and even letter carriers who are skeptical of putting their name on the signature, one of the things I was hearing is that still the union's leadership is not responding to the fact that they provided incorrect estimates of how much hours they would lose. There's a Vice article in my piece that I cited where they actually get an interview with the letter carriers union president, and he admitted there's going to be winners and losers, but it doesn't really sound like there's much remorse for how it's played out so far.
Right. And we should also say that these rural carriers have talked to some of their compatriots who are city carriers and don't feel like it would be much of an upgrade to get the city carrier union as well. How are they collecting signatures? I mean, this has got to be hard, right? It's one thing to collect in your town, but one of the challenges, particularly in a rural setting, is you're going to have to drive. How do you drive 8 hours to get to, the next sort of facility where all these letter carriers are sort of coming out? They're all spread out. That's the point, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very shoestring operation. The main person collecting the signatures, he's a letter carrier in, I believe, North Carolina or Tennessee, and he's sending out these petitions to people who express interest, and he's the one that's kind of managing the signature collection.
Is there some type of website that they've set up or anything like that?
Yes. They have decertifynrlca.com. And that's
decertifynlcra.com. We'll put a link to that in our podcast and YouTube descriptions. I mean, you know, I'm not sure what the point of or why you'd want to hang with a union that has really allowed for these level of cutbacks. And also, frankly, I think I don't know to what extent the unions have any ability to agitate against Louis DeJoy, but it feels like the route that they have chosen is just to go along to get along, and it seems a little bit anachronistic in this era.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jarod Facundo, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We'll put a link to your piece and to that site if there are rural letter carriers listening who want to get involved in like this attempt to find another union. Really appreciate your time, Jarod.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dr. Sara Nur Yildiz, professor of history at Middle East Technical University in Ankara, Turkey, who is frankly going to spend a big part of the next few minutes explaining to me the relationship between Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Nagorno-Karabakh. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Joining us now, Dr. Sara Nur Yildiz. She's a professor in history at Middle East Technical University in Ankara, Turkey, who has obviously been writing and studying about this conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh and really between, I guess, Armenia and Azerbaijan, which has been going on for some time, right? I mean, will you just start by giving us a sense of like, you know, where I guess the historical sort of like context for this conflict?
Okay, well, let me first start with some geography. I think that may help as well to envision Nagorno-Karabakh. It is a mountainous enclave, which is currently in the territorial borders of Azerbaijan. It is about the size of the state of Rhode Island, around 4,400 squared kilometers. So we're not talking about a huge place, but nevertheless, this region has been recently, as we know, really undergoing some traumatic events. And I would say, however, first of all, the Armenian inhabitants of Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, as it has been historically known, have been there for time immemorial, we could say. But there was never any ethnic tensions of any of any of this kind in the earlier periods, say in the early modern period, when we have basically this region was under the control of Iranian Hans under, during, in the 16th, 17th century. And it really changes in 1828 with the conquest of the Caucasus by Russia and the creation of this viceroyalty province based at Tbilisi. And however,
let me just ask you. So when we're talking about 15th, 16th century or so, how delineated was Armenia and Azerbaijan, and how, both in terms of like in terms of borders, and in terms of like Armenians are predominantly Christian, in Azerbaijan predominantly Muslim, I'm also curious, between Turkey and Azerbaijan, like how did Armenia and sort of like that Armenian nationality or ethnicity, how did that develop?
Okay, well, in the early modern period, before the Russian conquest, there were Khanates that the Iranian, beginning the Safavid and then later the Qajar period, we have like under Iranian rule, we had these sort of semi-autonomous Khanates who were the political rulers. They were Muslim, but there seemed to be no real problem between Armenians and Turks, Muslim Turks. Azerbaijanis, that's a later name, but not really until 1905 do we see any, the beginning of bloodshed between these communities. So this is a purely modern phenomenon. And what we can say, though, is Nagorno-Karabakh was a highly mountainous region, mostly with Armenians living in the region, but surrounded in the valleys, the lower valleys were the Muslims. So you had a different topographical distribution rather than any kind of state delineation. So this explains why you have this mixed population. And in the Soviet period, if we skip through history, we see that in order to preserve the self-determination of the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh, they made it into an autonomous oblast or province, sub-province of Azerbaijan. And the Soviets seemed to be capable of keeping things under control. Even though there had been terrible bloodbath during World War I, this was, put under control basically in the Soviet period. And then we see it breaking out again with the collapse of the Soviet Union. And in 1988, we see that the population of Nagorno-Karabakh had a referendum and declared their independence. This was, I think, in the summer, and then a few months later, Azerbaijan also declared its independence. So you see this. This is sort of the beginning of the conflict that we see the roots of today. And there was the first massacre, Sumgate, in 1988, and then we have subsequent communal conflicts, massacres. Both sides. 1992, Khojali was what Azerbaijan is always talking about, is like an Armenian pogrom or massacre against Azeris. So it just sort of this kind of blame game keeps going on and continues. And unfortunately, the international community has done really nothing to prevent us from getting to where we are now.
And just so that people understand sort of geographically, Nagorno-Karabakh or I guess Artsakh, as it was referred to by Armenians, there's almost like it's almost analogous to the way that like Berlin was in East Germany, right? Like there is like one road to Nagorno-Karabakh where they would get their supplies from Armenia, and they were sort of cut off, at least sort of, I don't know, psychically or geographically from the rest of Azerbaijan, although that they were sort of like an island within Azerbaijan. Is that right?
Yes, but the real island aspect happens a bit later with the 2020 war. Now, remember that in 1990, in the 1990s, which was the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, resulted in a ceasefire in 1994 brokered by Russia, and Armenians emerged as the victors in this war. And this war was a great sort of trauma for Azerbaijan, and the ruler Elchibey at that time he basically lost all political legitimacy, and that's when Aliyev's father took over power and ruled for 10 years, based on the idea that Elchi, the previous ruler, was guilty of basically destroying Azerbaijan, and Armenian soldiers had taken a large amount of territory, well, relatively speaking, in the lower valleys, making contiguous to Armenia. And part of the negotiations that have been ongoing in the last decades was the Armenian occupation of this Azeri territory should be returned. But Armenians always said, well, we can't return it unless we're given a guarantee of security for the population of Nagorno-Karabakh. In 2020 war, the 44-day war in 2020, basically was an Azerbaijani victory, and they reclaimed that lower valley land and then made basically Nagorno-Karabakh kind of this island dependent on the Lachin corridor, which is what you were referring to.
And Russian peacekeepers were essentially maintaining that dynamic until fairly recently, and ostensibly because Russia is occupied with their occupation and invasion of Ukraine. And they basically didn't have the resources nor the interest in maintaining that dynamic. And that's basically what we've seen over the past couple of weeks, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's one explanation. If you start looking into the local politics, things get a bit more complicated. But ultimately, the Russian peacekeepers refused to do anything about the blockade that started December 11 of 2022. And this blockade basically lasted into this war for 9 months, starving the residents of Nagorno-Karabakh. And so these people who are
Azerbaijan,
fleeing,
just to be clear, blockaded that corridor where folks in Nagorno-Karabakh would get their supplies, their food, their
medical supplies, etc.
Okay.
So
and
this
you had 140
blockade.
140,000 or so people basically cut off from their these type of sort of like daily needs of supplies.
Exactly. Yeah, 120,000 people. They keep saying this is the population. And now, I mean, you can see, starvation on the faces of many of these refugees. I mean, this has been, devastating. And currently, well, there's probably, as of this afternoon, our time here, there was about 50,000 people who'd crossed over, and now probably a lot more. And they're still in the process of registering these people in Armenia, and it's really, I mean, it is a really incredible human, huge tragedy at the moment, because these people have lost everything, and they, they're going to a country that doesn't have a lot of resources and doesn't have petroleum wealth. So, yeah, it's right now very, very
what's the
concerning,
value?
But it's not.
What's the value to Azerbaijan for Nagorno-Karabakh? Like, what is there a particular resource that's available there? Is that a some type of like transportation hub? Like, I'm not clear on what has been the sort of urgent motivation, I guess, because what we're seeing is ethnic cleansing, right? I mean, this is you're talking about 50% of the population of this area within the course of 2 weeks are leaving all of their possessions outside of what they can carry on their backs, more or less, homes, businesses, and this is maybe just the start. Maybe, I mean, what is the value of Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan?
Well, I think there are several values. One, of course, it's the political capital that it imparts onto Aliyev, and he rules, as you probably know, with a iron fist, a dictator. He and his clan, the Pashevs, who his wife's family is like the most powerful family actually in Azerbaijan. They basically own the country, and they have to, though, appeal. They use nationalism to bolster, consolidate their power, obviously, and when people do protest or political opposition has anything, any kind of protest against anything they do, they end up in jail immediately. So, I mean, this, I have to say this, like, Erdogan looks like a democratic ruler in comparison.
And is it the existence of any type of like ongoing defiance to an autocrat's rule becomes a threat merely because it's showing that some people can get away with it? Is that what's going on there? Or is it like,
I mean, it's complicated. I mean, to understand Aliyev's power, I mean, he's a dynasty. His father was there before him for a decade. And he has petrol wealth behind him. And he has a good PR campaign for the last, since 2011. They have poured a lot of that money from the petroleum wealth into bribing politicians all, in Europe and in the United States. So they have, very carefully crafted Aliyev's power, and he's very, very, very firmly in power. And I don't know of any very few Azeris will critique him who are not abroad. It's virtually impossible to be, at least from the outside. I'm not there, so I can't really say exactly how this works. The second thing, too, is this. Why is Nagorno-Karabakh important? Because there is also, it has huge amount of natural resources in the form of minerals. And this is where the oligarch conflict, as I would call it, comes into probably. I mean, so, Aliyev is not the only oligarch or, billionaire politician in the equation. And this is a bit complicated and maybe controversial what I'm going to say, but the recent state minister of Nagorno-Karabakh is a billionaire oligarch.
This is Ruben
Vardanyan.
Okay.
Vardanyan was just arrested today big news by Azerbaijan at the border when he tried to cross into Armenia. And he's also Pashinyan, Nikol Pashinyan, the current prime minister of Armenia's one of his biggest enemies. And this whole equation of Vardanyan appearing into Artsakh, the Republic of Artsakh, becoming the state minister in 1221, has really, I think, been overlooked as to how it has really shooken up the situation. And they say that Vardanyan, well, he's on the after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, there was the list of oligarchs who needed to be sanctioned. He was among these. So the United States, Ukraine have designated him a sanctioned Russian citizen. And this coincides, of course, with him trying to relinquish his Russian citizenship, which he had in 2021. He took on Armenian citizenship, and then he ends up in Nagorno-Karabakh, as a minister for several months. And I mean, the thing is that there was an accusation that he is so wealthy and he has been in his hands in everything, and that his control of the mines, is something that probably Aliyev wants to prevent. In fact, we have to go back to events in December, just right around the time the blockade began. And there was a lot of, there was this incident of Azeri ecological protesters at the Lachin corridor, and they were protesting Vardanyan's extraction of the wealth of Karabakh. Now, there's two very, very important mines, which Aliyev has promised, his father gave to, obviously, in 1997 to the Anglo-Asian mining company, which is run by a very shady character who was, escaped Iran during the revolution, who was a high official under the Shah. And his name is Reza Vaziri. And he, along with his cohorts in Britain and the United States, including Michael Sununu, the son and the former governor of Hampshire, Sununu. I mean, these people are members of the board of this mining company. So here we have.
We should also say former chief of staff for George W. Bush, I think it was, or was it? Yeah.
Exactly. So here we have, these oligarchic interests clashing over these mines. And as we know, that mining companies are extremely destructive to the environment. And in fact, Aliyev, they have their own company. Like the second largest mining company in Azerbaijan is owned by Aliyev and his wife. And they have been, this mining company, has been really, very corrupt. All mining companies are basically corrupt entities. And I think the Anglo-Asian mine in Azerbaijan that basically poisoned the water of these villages in a place called Suyutlu, which in this summer, the villagers were protesting against basically the construction of another artificial lake in which they would put the gold, processing waste into this open lake, which basically is, total toxic, disastrous thing for the environment and for the villagers. And they were brutally repressed this summer. So so here we have basically dispossession of people, whether they're Azeris, but especially right now of Nagorno-Karabakh residents, over these kinds of resource wars, but all done under the legalities of the current systems. And I think this is part of the tragedy that we have to place this in. It's not just about saying, we have to respect the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, which is the main talking point in international circles. And in this respect, of course, the whole idea of self-determination as part of the Madrid conference has completely been forgotten, because Azerbaijani, sort of public relations has really made that not part of the talking points anymore. And so basically here we are, dispossession of people from their home, and not only that, but also a cultural genocide of Nagorno-Karabakh, which has been, there have been archaeological digs that go to, before Christ. So yeah, but it doesn't end here. The next step is taking Syunik, or the Zangezur corridor, which is south, bordering Iran, in between Nakhchivan, which is like kind of, it borders Armenia and Turkey, but is not contiguous to Azerbaijan. So they need to make this contiguous to Azerbaijan by taking Syunik, or the Zangezur corridor. And this is one of the biggest pieces of headlines in Turkey right now, because Erdogan and Aliyev are working towards this. Is the next step, and Armenians naturally see that this is not just the end of the problem, but continue. This will not stop. This will continue.
Wow. It really.
I hope that I didn't make this complicated, but.
No. I mean, it's been very helpful to understand. I mean, it basically feels like it comes down to some type of like neo-feudal war amongst just sort of like neo dukes and lords, essentially. But in this instance, it's just people who are oligarchs, and they're marshaling nationalities.
Yeah, but it's just. Yeah, I mean, we should maybe just say billionaires.
Billionaires,
because it's not just happening.
Right. Right.
I mean, post-Soviet billionaires, we call them oligarchs, somehow to mark them as more corrupt. But they're really just part of this whole, sort of corrupt landscape.
Right. Right. Fair enough. I have no problem with just calling them billionaires. But it's fascinating, and it sounds. I guess is there a danger that we're going to move from this ethnic cleansing and this cultural genocide to actual genocide? Because it feels like the only thing that sort of like is standing in that way is the public relations sort of project that the billionaire-run Azerbaijan wants to maintain, that they still have some type of righteousness in here, and that would be far more difficult if we start to see like an actual genocide, as opposed to the horrific in its own, the ethnic cleansing and the cultural genocide.
It's a very good question. What I don't understand about the international community is during the 9 months of the blockade that they weren't there, that they weren't doing anything. And now we see Samantha Powers shows up, to the refugee camps and, the processing centers, and talks to Armenian refugees and promises $11.5, billion, or was it $1 million, to for the refugees. And then then the EU says, oh, we'll send money too. Of course they don't mention, they'll send what, 3 million, or something like $3 million. But they don't kind of mention that back in a year before, in 2022, the EU had promised around 2 billion euros to to Azerbaijan to develop an aid, or whatever that is that they were promising. So when you think about the money that's being promised to the refugees and to Armenia, is quite minuscule.
Right.
It's really, so will there be a genocide if Azerbaijan decides to liquidate Armenia, if they can? This is big question. And I think many Armenians fear this. And until we have an international community that can actually do something rather than just, show up when it's too late, I have no answer.
Dr. Sara Nur Yildiz, Professor of History at Middle East Technical University, Ankara, Turkey. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We'll put a link to one of the pieces you wrote with Jean Bajalan, among others, back in 2020, which gives a good sort of like primer. You guys were aware that things were headed, at least in some respects, in this direction. And some other pieces so that people can read into this more. But really appreciate your walking us through this. It's an incredibly complex conflict, which at the end of the day seems to boil down to billionaires wanting resources, wanting more money. But really appreciate your coming on. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. You too. Okay, folks, we're going to take a break. Head into the fun half of the program. Reminder, tonight we will have the Republican debate with the 6 all-star Republican primary guys. And of course, missing from the debate tonight will be sorely missed Asa Hutchinson,
from wherever he's from,
former governor of Arkansas and guy hanging out wherever he is, no longer in the mix. And I wonder if the other Republican primary candidates are thinking about how they're going to carve up his 1%, which incidentally,
it's going to go to Trump.
I'll
have all that, thanks.
If they do carve that up, it's going to probably double what a couple of those guys actually have. I mean, the amazing thing about it is, if you look at the numbers, it doesn't even feel like if you added up all of the rest of the field, that they would be really, I mean, maybe if you added up all of them, they would compete, but certainly not all the never Trumpers, right? Like Vivek is like,
he's went down since the first debates, at least what I saw. The early results were not good for him. People thought like he won it because he was the loudest or something, but people didn't react fondly to him.
I got news for Vivek. He may be able to sell some books, and he may be able to I don't know, maybe he's going to get himself a pardon if he ever needs one or something like that from somebody. But Vivek does not have a huge electoral future in the Republican Party. But I also think that is, when you have that kind of money, that's not what's going on there.
He's just grifting.
Yep. Well, I think what he's doing is setting up a dynamic so that in his future business endeavors, he's going to have the relationships with politicians that are going to sort of grease those, wheels.
I guess this is why I'm not in Vivek's place, but if I like pump and dump my way to that kind of wealth, I would be on a beach somewhere. I wouldn't be lying in front of cameras.
100%. 100%.
Very strange.
I will say this, there's been a recent controversy because there was a billionaire who was funding a bunch of shows, some which apparently.
But was he friend? Was he just friends? Was it just?
Yeah, billionaire. Friendly billionaire. And a lot of people make issue of Jimmy Dore saying that I can be bought and this and that, and they're like, he admitted it, and I imagine when he said that it was a joke. But sometimes there's something called joking on the square. But nevertheless, I will put this out there. If there's a billionaire out there who wants to fund me with $10 million, I'll tell you what I will do. I will go down to 1 day a week. I'll do an interview, guys, and I'll spend the rest of the time on the beach. I'll just put it out there.
I mean, I think some people in this industry have been doing, guest hosts for extended periods of times to the point that the chat is starting to kind of wonder where the normal guy is.
Wait, what?
On Jimmy Dore's.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, there's some guy that's been filling in for Jimmy for a while. I'm not sure why. Jimmy needs a vacation or something.
Yeah. I'll take that. Yeah, where's my billionaire?
Yeah.
How much would it take to get one of you guys on the beach? Full time?
I mean, $5K a month might not be it, but it'd go a good.
Well, listen, the $5K a month is just a number that is a speculation. Nobody's seen the books,
Right.
and it sounds like a minimum of $5K a month.
Introductory, yeah. But even that would be like, I'm looking.
Yeah, I don't need a lot. I do it for much. I'll do it for
less than Jimmy. I'll tell you that.
for sure.
to go to the beach.
Just
yeah. I don't even like the beach that much.
Jimmy Buffett mode.
I mean,
I prefer lakes.
If my I'll tell you that right now. If my kid was 22, my youngest was 22, that number would drop precipitously. We'll make that clear.
If I was friends with a billionaire, I mean, I know you can't ask him now because he's passed, but I would ask him things like, "Hey, what do you think about Chicago Teachers Union?" Just pick his brain about things like that.
Libertarian. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. And if you're a billionaire, it's your support that can make the show not possible.
Get super independent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For literally pennies a day. Is it pennies a day? How many shows do we do a month? Let's say 20, right? 50 cents a day. It's actually probably more than 20, but let's just call it 48 cents a day. This show will be here, providing you guests that you may not hear anywhere else, really, in many respects. And for, I don't know what, how $10 million breaks down per show, but for $10 million,
you can find out.
You could be a lot less of me. You can send me to the beach. But for the rest of you, join themajorityreport.com. If it's $10 million, you got to call me because I don't want to run it through the fee. The fees on that are going to be too much.
Yeah. Set up a direct deposit.
Yeah. Yeah. Call on 646-257-3920. We'll go to the private phone thing. But honestly, if you do listen to the show on a regular basis and you enjoy our content, support us. When you become a member, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you get access to the fun half if you want it. You don't have to listen to it. You can also IM the show. And you can help the show survive and thrive. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, check out our Discord, majoritydiscord.com. I think like close to 9,000 people in there. If you're on YouTube, like us. Tell your friends. If you're on Twitch, we got a massive hype train yesterday. I think we were pushing like a hype train 12.
I'm pretty sure we got above that actually.
Did we?
And we're close to a hype train now. Apparently, it is. It's a good month to be subscribing to Twitch because there's a 25% off thing as well.
Whoa.
So I think that's where some of that energy came from yesterday.
Damn. Pac-Man hit 2 million subscribers. Did he? I did not congratulate him.
Do you know we have more than Timcast?
Subscribers?
Yeah.
Is that right?
He's got 1.2.
I didn't know that. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Join us tonight at 9 p.m. if you're not joining us in the fun half today. Bradley, ESVN, what did you guys talk about?
We did a pretty comprehensive wrap-up of Week 3 of NFL action and what we and did our predictions for Monday Night Football. And then tomorrow we will have ESPN OT to give our 3 top picks for the weekend. YouTube.com/ESPN show to catch up on the broadcast or to check out some clips before we go live tomorrow again at 4 p.m.
Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, Left Reckoning last night. We had Jacob from the Val Labor Report, an outfit that's been getting a lot of love from the UAW Twitter feed, a lot of retweets. Talking about the UAW strategy, some of the dumb critiques of the strategy, a bit premature, maybe planting seeds to say I told you so in case it doesn't go well, but talked about that, and also went deep into this Tim Pool grocery store communism story.
Oh, we're going to talk about that today.
We'll talk about it today in the fun half, but in the post game we talked about that for about an hour. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
You enjoy my socialism. I am says more subscribers than Timcast, yet no MR skate park. Very sus indeed. Star Fox says, can the server please get a shofar or an I'm losing it, bro, for our member Sea Dog? They start grad school at the University of Washington today, and they're going to knock them dead. Go Sea Dog, go Huskies. Hi, Bumbler. MSNBC Cedar says, careful with the defamation slander against Dim Tool, Matt. I'm showing his YouTube subscriber count at 1.57 million.
Which channel is that? Because I think he might have, maybe he has more than one.
That's what it is. He's got many.
Yeah.
All right, folks. And Samantha Ears says, Pac-Man hasn't hit 2 million. We got to stop listening to the IMs. It's complete disinfo. Still at 1.9. All right, folks. Hey, subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey Sam, hey Andy, you guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we are back. Sam Seder. Fun half of the Majority Report, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure to have you here. Let's Let's see. Sam, on Vivek sounds like cake. Did you see his recent interview in which he said his father is not a U.S. citizen? His mother became a citizen after giving birth to the children. And Vivek became a citizen by dint of birth and a USA policy and now campaigns to change. It's international social. In other words, he's an anchor baby is what they used to call them back when the Republicans did not like that.
Still think kind of enough of them don't like it for him to be viable in the primary.
Oh yeah, let's not kid ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. That's not happening.
There's new reporting out. Jacob Silverman just retweeted that when the stuff blew up with Sam Bankman-Fried about the FTX, he was meeting with Ron DeSantis at that time. It's interesting. Yeah. All the perception he's just some sort of Democrat.
Right. It's just he's a rich guy, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. Oh, yeah, we never talked about this. Listener from Compton says, have you seen Jose's video, Steven Crowder's fake Rumble views? Yeah, I watched the 15-minute version of that. And I don't know if there's a longer version. I think Jose said that he's going to come out with one on Crowder. But it's fascinating. Apparently what happens, he did this, and we've got to do this. Rumble, every 15 seconds that you run the video, it counts it as like multiple hits. I can't remember exactly what, but we need to be running a 15-second video on a loop before we go live, and we're gonna
Yeah, so I can't take a screen grab of the thing because we're actually streaming live now to Rumble, so I can't set up a new stream. But when you start up a stream, it asks you would you like a preview video?
Yeah, and I hope we put yes.
And well, we had been doing it initially, but we didn't really understand the utility of it.
Yeah.
And now we understand the utility of it. Thanks.
We're gonna do a 15-second video. And it's just going to be if you're a conservative, call in 646-257-3920, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Because every time that restarts, that counts as a view on Rumble, which is how you get to the giant totals that Dan Bongino and Steven Crowder are getting to, is just having their landing page open for a few hours and letting the...
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if I was an investor, I'd be asking some questions about that.
Well, that's why I think you're seeing the stock stuff, because people are starting to ask questions, I think, a little bit. And, when you have to go to the mat to, look, I've said this before. I don't think that you should be demonetized. I get that YouTube has their terms of service and they can do that. But I just don't think it is a good thing that you can be demonetized for just being accused of doing something. Even if the evidence seems overwhelming and you are likely to have done it, I just don't think that you can operate a society that way, because who gets to choose whether that people can make their own assessments in that way. But I should also say that being demonetized, if you're a millionaire, is not censorship. I could see the argument if it's somebody's making, they're worth $50,000 annually and that's it. And you cut them off for that.
Happens all the time on YouTube.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Incidentally, on YouTube. And you never hear people crying about it. They only cry about it when it's a multimillionaire who is getting demonetized.
Who, by the way, was apparently monetized when he was talking all that BS on COVID up to this, which I think is the real reason YouTube did it, is they're embarrassed now.
Right. But nevertheless, that's not the same as censorship. I'm sorry, it's just not.
No, it's not the gulag.
Not being allowed to make millions of dollars is not censorship.
Yep.
It's just not.
I'd also want to know if I was a Rumble investor, what Rumble leadership knew about some of those behind the scenes rumblings about brand.
People say, you read stuff that people like supposedly part of the reason why his career sort of dried up was because people didn't want him on the set. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what some of, the reporting has been.
Yeah.
But I had no idea. All right, let's go into this. Tim Pool, who, to his credit, I think has only been accused of kidnapping a cat at one point.
I forgot about that.
Against one of his workers.
That was weird.
But here is Tim Pool just sort of reacting without really knowing what he's talking about. And frankly, and we mentioned this story briefly, that the new mayor of Chicago was considering the creation of government-operated grocery stores to deal with the food deserts in parts of Chicago. And, we have in the country a lot of examples of government doing these things. I think is it in New Hampshire? Maybe it is that the liquor stores are all, or maybe it's Maine or New Hampshire. I remember one of these places. All the liquor stores are state run.
Yep, New Hampshire is one of them. Yeah, there's a few others too. It seems like so. There's some state-owned ones in Alabama, Idaho, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Utah.
Virginia. We've had state initiatives in running things like Wi-Fi. But liquor store, it's a retail business. It's very similar. It's not as necessarily like dealing with a social problem that like a food desert would. And you could argue that I think it's quite obvious. Dealing with like providing grocery stores to areas where there's food deserts, which means that you're going to be able to like bring in a better quality of food than, let's say, what you get like what we call a bodega. So it's not just like, potato chips and all this processed stuff that is going to have a long shelf life, but you could bring in, produce, and you could do so at reduced costs. I've been at different times a member of actually various grocery co-ops run not for profit. And it's fantastic. And these co-ops, you got to work a couple hours a month or something like that, but you're getting produce that you wouldn't otherwise get, and it's much less expensive. And if you are responsible for a city, there's a lot of like value to the city to run a grocery store like this, because if you're providing better quality food, you're going to necessarily mean that you're going to have healthier citizens in your city. And if you have healthier citizens in your city, particularly in areas where there are food deserts, low income areas, you're going to be saving money on what you need to fund, emergency rooms and hospitals. And this is literally a win-win-win type of situation. But Tim Pool sees this and sees an opportunity to talk about leftists going crazy. Let's hear what he has to say. Oh, and we should also matter, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with it, although oddly, it's a weird place to cut off the image of this headline. The mayor is black.
Communist shift in Chicago is beginning. And don't be surprised if you start to see it pop up all over the place.
Pause it for a second. Did he say the communist shift?
Yes. That's what he said.
Okay. Yes, the communist shift. There it is.
The communist shift in Chicago is beginning. And don't be surprised if you start to see it pop up all over the place. This tactic, implemented in Chicago. Chicago considers creation of government-operated grocery store. The promotion of food equity was an expressed goal in the mayor's press release. Why am I saying food communism or communist policies? Crime runs rampant. People struggle to survive. Walgreens closes. The mall closes. San Francisco is collapsing.
I just have to pause it here. There's nothing about crime. These aren't closing because of crime. It's because grocery stores are too low margin for capitalists to bother.
I want to say something. That's in terms of these supermarkets. Target has announced they're closing a bunch of inner city stores because of crime. On the same or the day after they announced that, the Retailers Association comes out with data saying we're not seeing it in the numbers.
Yeah.
There's no significant increase in crime. Now, it's quite possible that in limited areas, that's the case. It's also quite possible, because Target's not releasing this data to assess it, that let's say you put a Target in East Harlem and it's underperforming because the community doesn't have the money that you thought they would by this time, because you thought the gentrification was going forward, but maybe COVID screwed up that timetable. And you need to pretend like this is not
us,
the C-suite making a prediction about how quickly East Harlem's going to gentrify, but rather it's the crime. Guess what you do? That's what you do.
Well, corporations don't have to tell the truth.
There is actually, if you can believe this, there is a fiduciary responsibility for them to show their numbers, but the justification for closing things, they don't have to. There is no obligation for them to be truthful in that regard. So just before we go, just know that, the retail numbers came out, was the NRF study. Pop that up just so that people know what we're talking about. And this is from that is it the Communist News Bureau, CNBC? Is that what it is? Is that what they call it? Retail theft isn't actually increasing much. Major industry study finds. Major industry study. This is the National Retail Federation study. All right, let's go back, just so, to be clear. And San Francisco could be falling apart, according to Tim Pool, but oddly, the mayor of Chicago is not making policies based upon that. But go ahead.
Crime runs rampant. People struggle to survive. Walgreens closes. The mall closes. San Francisco is collapsing. Well, what happens? I don't know. Problem, reaction, solution, right? Problem. Stores are closing due to high crime. Let's pause for a second and just say the crime's caused by the lax Democrat policies, but I digress. Crime runs rampant. Stores close. Here's one store. Beloved Oakland restaurant is forced to shut down with its owner blaming rampant crime. Okay. Now let's go to Chicago.
Just a thing.
Incidentally,
these narratives,
Oakland is not in Chicago.
Exactly.
I just thought
even
just
taking,
drop that in there.
Even taking that restaurant owner who failed at face value, not in Chicago.
Right. I mean, and the restaurant must have been doing so well. That's why the criminals kept going there. But anyways.
Now with its owner blaming rampant crime. Okay. Now let's go to Chicago. As these narratives persist and these stores begin to close because they can't keep up with the crime, people in these areas start to complain. In San Francisco, they shut down many Walgreens stores. The malls closed. The hotels have surrendered their property. And eventually people are going to say, what do we do? Where can I buy food anymore? The government then steps in. And this is what's happening in Chicago. And they say, well, ladies and gentlemen, we know that these private businesses refuse to support you, so we will. Here's the story.
Pause it. What is going on with Tim Pool and his sort of like affectation today?
I know. Well, because he's talking BS, but he's selling the tone of authority.
Right. I mean, there's like he's really pressing here. It's interesting. Now, I want to hear from both you guys. Have you in any way altered his cadence? Mechanically or through sound processing.
Oh, sorry, guys. I probably put it through the dipshit filter right
Okay, all right. That's not right.
Sound dumb.
Oh, yeah.
Just to be clear,
let me take that off.
Boop,
boop, boop. Sorry, it's off now.
All right, great. Thanks.
To support you. So we will. Here's the story. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has revealed that the city will be partnering with the Economic Security Project to explore the creation of a government-owned grocery store to assist historically underserved communities. Oh, here it is.
Oh, boy.
All Chicagoans deserve to live near convenient, affordable, healthy grocery options. We know access to grocery stores is already a challenge for many residents, especially in the South and West sides, said Mayor Brandon Johnson. A better, stronger, safer future is one where our youth and our communities have access to the tools and resources they need to thrive.
Communism.
My administration is committed to advancing innovative whole-of-government approaches to address these inequities.
Communism.
I am proud to work alongside partners to take the step envisioning what a municipality-owned grocery store in Chicago could look like. Right. So when they destroy the local business with COVID policy,
pause it. So there's another. That's the other thing is like the idea these businesses are closing isn't anything to do inherent with capitalism. It's all either crime or COVID policy.
Right.
But I'll say like. You know, we have an example of a Florida version of this happening. That was in 2019, pre-COVID. Food deserts have long predated the 2000 COVID epidemic. I mean, I remember hearing about them first maybe during Obama.
Oh, my God. They've been around for a long time.
Yeah, like, and that's just me coming to consciousness. So it could have been talked about in the 90s. And so like, the idea that this was COVID is another absurdity.
No, it is that supermarkets don't go into neighborhoods into low-income neighborhoods because they're just not going to do the volume of sales and the high-end stuff with the high-end margins that they need to support the infrastructure of the business. Yeah. I mean, this is exactly the type of business that government should engage in, where the marketplace cannot provide or will not provide. Now, I think there's a lot of those that are sort of submerged that we don't know about, right? Like whether it's like a lot of medical innovation that major corporations don't feel could be commoditized and profitable. And so these things that could actually help people don't necessarily make it to market. I mean, we could go on and on. All right, but continue.
So when they destroy the local business with COVID policy, when crime then runs rampant and you can't support your business anymore, they then say, oh, gee golly, I guess we're going to have to do it.
Oh, gosh.
Everyone's complaining. Here's your solution. Hey, we can't force private businesses to come and open up a grocery store. And crime, these poor people are just hungry.
None of these stories mention
like a government-owned grocery store. And I wonder how that'll play out. It's going to be like Aldi, probably a whole bunch of generic brands that will cost the bare minimum and inevitably become deeply corrupted.
All right, pause.
That's how things go.
I don't like it. Okay. Generic brands, like they're going to actually build their own brands.
They're going to start manufacturing their own
stuff.
We're
going to manufacture our own stuff. We're not going to get existing brands. We're going to get generic brands. Now, whatever generic brands are, which I honestly, I don't know what that means in the context of these things.
He explains later, like he means like how Walmart does their own brand. And then...
Okay, that's not generic brand. Those are actually supplier branded. So, and to be clear, Walmart is not manufacturing this stuff.
Right.
They're just putting different packaging on some other enterprise.
That they bought.
Or maybe they didn't even buy it.
Or license.
Maybe it's just like, Heinz ketchup has some extra ketchup and they have a retail business and a wholesale business, essentially. Yeah. And we do a white label business and so they put their label on it. Now, I don't know why the city would do that because it would involve added cost. Although maybe it would allow them to sell the stuff at a lower cost. And if it works out, if the numbers work out,
and people like it,
and we just got to slap a label on this, okay.
Yeah.
And you know what's better than having no produce in your supermarket or available in your neighborhood? Having produce available in your market, regardless of what the brand is.
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't Dole banana. This isn't like a Chiquita bananas. These are Chicago bananas.
You joke at the end of the video. I don't think we'll get to it, but he literally laments like, who's going to pay for the graphic design on these?
Such a ding dong idiot.
Go ahead, brother.
You think the food's going to be healthy and good? No, it's going to be garbage. It's going to be plastic trash. It's going to be eventually too expensive.
All right, pause it now. Okay, so now, like, understand, he's mocking, like, food equity, which is how do we get good food to underserved areas? He mocks that in one breath. Go, I can't have anything to eat. And then he says, and the city's going to set out to provide none of that stuff that they're saying. So, I mean, now he moves, like, he's moving from the principle is wrong argument to they're incompetent without ever addressing why the principle is wrong. And he's just speculating that the market's going to be incompetent. And again, we have examples of co-ops, and in a moment, we have a real surprise for you all about where this creeping communism has been around. But go ahead.
Interesting what happens when a government-run business comes in and undercuts all the other private businesses.
Pause it again. Sorry, just real quick.
The point is, there are no other businesses. That's why they're in there. He already made that clear at the beginning of the thing.
You can't undercut
He
what
just
isn't there.
attributed the lack of existence of these businesses to a fiction he's created in his mind from across the country. But now he's claiming that there are actually supermarkets there and they're going to be undercut. So now the stuff is going to be less expensive, but according to him, not as good as the other place that doesn't exist.
Totally would if you had.
Like, he's only 3 minutes into this and he's lost his own thread.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Run business comes in and undercuts all the other private businesses. You see where this is going? Someone in a neighboring municipality will be like, the government-run store is cheaper. So they'll go there. Eventually, while it's not really cheaper, the government just subsidizes it, they'll make this argument. Look, it may cost $5.
The government's not going to be subsidizing this. They're just not going to be taking a profit, which necessarily means you're going to see, having worked at a co-op, I know this, like the markups generally in these stores is somewhere around 30, it can be up to 40%, it can be like maybe as low as like 28%.
Yeah.
So the reason why these stores aren't there is that they can't get that 28 to 40% markup on every product. It's not every, some products have higher ones, some have lower but that's the average. And the city doesn't need that because it's not for profit.
Yep.
So in other words, you could have that same supermarket. You could pay all the people the same amount of money because what profit is revenue, how much money's coming in versus how much money's going out. And what's left over is profit, and that goes to the shareholders.
Yep.
But if there are no shareholders and you have no pressure to make profit, you can pay everybody in the market the exact same amount. You can have the exact same products, although your choices would differ because you would go for quality over what gives you a bigger markup, because you don't need the markup. And everything would be the same. You just don't need to make that profit. That's how this works. That's how it works in a co-op.
Yeah.
Go ahead. For a gallon of milk, as prices go up. But the average person can't afford it. So here's what the government store is going to do. We're going to sell milk for $3 because you can't afford it. It's reduced option. Now, even though it costs us $5, we'll sell it for $3, which means the store operates at a loss. But don't worry, the taxpayer will pay the rest.
Not what happened.
That's already how it operates.
No.
They have reduced fare bus passes. They always have. If you are of a certain income level,
now can we just let's maybe roll out here because he goes into bus sort of subsidy and go to like 845, Bradley, because he goes into like the Pruitt I go thing.
Oh, we should also say, you know what else the cities subsidize are the roads and the sewers, and city subsidizes trash pickup and police and firefighters. They subsidize, like the idea that you're talking about subsidies of public transportation. It's public transportation. That is the nature of it. Like everything that the city does it subsidizes in that way.
And I mean, even from a capitalist perspective, like that gets workers to their jobs where they can earn money for their boss.
It's a subsidy to all the private enterprises.
Yeah.
Now, in this instance, there are plenty of instances where a grocery store, because you're just selling a product, would not need to be subsidized. In fact, a supermarket is far less likely to be subsidized than the road that you take to get to your skate park, the road that the cement mixers who pour your skate park, or the wood delivery companies, or the Home Depot that delivered your plywood for your skate park, those are all subsidized by a municipality. But continue.
Yeah, this is from a little bit later on because gets into the
we jumped forward.
Fine, not filthy, but lacking products. Why would a government-run grocery store buy 10 different kinds of peanut butter? They just buy the one peanut butter and they'll slap peanut butter on it. When I was a kid, the grocery store by me had these yellow cans and it was just stamped with the name of what was on it. Beans.
Pause it.
Black beans.
Was that a government-run store, or was it you were living in a food desert and that's what happens in a food desert? And no, I don't think a government-run supermarket would have 10 different types of peanut butters, because they're not getting, like, they're not being, they don't have the economic incentive to put up peanut butters that are essentially garbage and that just have a higher markup. They will have 2, maybe 3 types of peanut butters.
In the clip of, we're going to play after this of one of the news stories, the one out of Florida, I don't know if that's the one we're going to play. I think we should play the Kansas one, but it had like 4 different types of Faygo soft drink in the shot. So turns out there's still selection.
Go ahead.
And it was just stamped with the name of what was on it. Beans. Black beans, refried beans, mushrooms. No label, no brand, nothing. Now, what they started doing is they've created the store brand. So like Walmart is Good Value and stuff, because they realized, people actually like it when they're buying a branded product they can recognize, not just generic product on the wall. The problem is when it comes to government subsidy, they had no incentive to do that. I mean, maybe they might for a while, but eventually they're going to say, we got to cut the budget. Who's doing graphic design for our store products? We don't need that. If people want beans, they'll buy beans. Just put a white label, write beans on it. I guess these cans, they also didn't have nutrition information, so I think that was a law that changed. Now they have to have it.
Thank you.
Government.
But ultimately, private businesses will struggle to compete with the public sector businesses. Are there private libraries? Look, libraries still exist. Barnes & Noble's gone. These bookstores are falling apart. Some still exist in some places, but for the most part...
The federal government is actually working on that by suing Amazon because of the monopoly they created. The reason why Barnes & Noble's, they still exist, but the reason why we don't see bookstores in the way that we used to is because of the internet. Let's be clear. It's not because of public libraries, which existed well before Barnes & Noble. In fact, well before probably just about any bookstore.
Yeah.
Well, we should be clear.
What's funny here is he realizes he contradicts himself. And then, as Aaron Brown pointed out when he covered this, like, he just uploads it anyway because he's like, well, I guess private libraries aren't just hellholes. Or public libraries aren't just hellholes. But then he acts like grocery stores you can't do that with. So let's watch a little bit more.
The Noble's gone. These bookstores are falling apart. Some still exist in some places, but for the most part, they're struggling. But libraries will be around for a good long time, so long as people keep saying we should have them. I like libraries, but libraries should serve a community purpose. And I'm also telling people this too. Your business...
Libraries should serve a community purpose. You know what they should do? They should make books accessible to the community. And also maybe some internet if you don't have internet. They should make resources available to the community, and hear me out, they should make it free to the community. So they're providing a community service instead of this stuff where they're just like, no, you can't come in here. We're just having a party. And, this is just a place for everybody who works for the city to come and hang out and chill time.
Yeah. You know what also has a public, what does they say, reason for existing or whatever, like grocery stores.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Time, so long as people keep saying we should have them. I like libraries, but libraries should serve a community purpose. And I'm also telling people of this too. Your business, if you're a brick and mortar store, should be a community enterprise. You need to figure out how you bring people in to break bread with each other and become friends with each other. And that's the real incentive. Otherwise, you're going to get replaced by robots. They're going to automate everything away. And then the government's going to end up owning everything. I'll leave it
Pause
there.
it. Let me just diagram that out. I don't know. So businesses listen to the regulatory authority of Tim Pool, become more communal, because if they don't, they're going to be replaced by robots. And once you get robots, the government can come in because they have the government robots reprogramming device that you have. Once you become mayor of Chicago, you get the robot reprogramming. Yeah. Like he just sort of lost steam after the library thing.
Because he realized libraries disprove his entire point that government-run stuff can't actually because he says right before that, he's like, no, there's not going to be no incentives to clean it. It's just going to be nasty in there. And he's like, oh, well, I guess libraries exist and they're not just nasty.
Yeah.
So,
all the books have different covers.
Yeah, they're not generic books saying philosophy on
book. Book. Math.
There's just 5 books that say book, math, reading, science.
Now, listen, I know a lot of you are very nervous about this onslaught of communism, but maybe this will assuage you a little bit because this communism has existed in the, where are we?
Let's go to Kansas now. It's close to Chicago.
Free state of Kansas. When was this from?
This was from 2022, I believe.
Oh, 22, but then we got to go to 2019.
Okay, yeah, we can do the Florida one, yep.
Think of city employees, you might think about ones in government, maintenance, but what about a butcher?
KSN Stefan Reels joins us, and Stefan, that's the case in Erie, Kansas.
Yes, it is, and it all started last year when the only supermarket in Erie was put up for sale, so the city bought it. It's something that not only kept a fixture in the city, in the community, but it also provided those who previously didn't have benefits with them.
It's a very important part. If you lose your grocery store, the town starts to wither.
So the city of Erie decided to save it. Last year, with community support, the city bought Stubbs Market.
Oh, God, just stop it for a second. This communism is driving me crazy.
Well, Sam, is it communism
look at these communists.
But there's no black people there, is it?
I was going to say, that's what's so confusing about it. But go ahead.
Just finished its
Pause it. Tim was right. Look at veggies, dairy. That's all there is there.
Erie Market. It's just finished.
Wow.
God, this looks just horrible. Go ahead.
Its first quarter under city management, and it's off to a great start.
Oh, it's been great. The community's been very supportive.
The first quarter is showing strong that we are making some money to put back.
The store is giving back even more. Since the turnover, all the employees started to receive benefits they didn't have before.
They became City of Erie employees, so now they have all the benefits that we have.
We are offered insurance for full-time people and retirement. We also give them paid vacations.
What is going on where they pretend like they have Nerds and Reese's and Milk Duds and M&M's? Like
they must have hired a graphic designer to counterfeit all of those brands.
Man. God, Erie's just pouring money into this.
Communism.
And sick days, too.
Benefits can often be a struggle for local companies to offer, making the hiring process difficult.
When you want to be hired, that's one thing you're looking for is insurance. It's part of the pay package,
all
really.
those
It means a
fake
lot
brands.
because before, when you work for mom and pop places, it's hard for the mom and pop places to afford the insurance. So with the city and they have more employees, it's a better opportunity for sure for them.
With this new resource, it's helped the store further develop their team.
It brought in some really good employees. Of course, we kept
That's
the
probably enough of
employees
this
that
one.
were
We can
already-
maybe go to.
Now, let's just be clear here. This happened in a town where there was only one supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
But the danger here is that what if there were 3 supermarkets there and the city did this? Think of what would happen to those other employees at the other two supermarkets if those other two supermarkets said like, hey, we can't compete with this. We're going to go out of business, and the city took it over. Think about what would happen to the workers. They would all end up having benefits and pensions. And that is communism. Apparently.
Yep.
And of course, then it would be helpful for the community, and they would turn, I guess, a little bit of a profit. And that's bad because of
graphic design.
No, the shareholders. We're not thinking about the shareholders.
Oh, right. Who's going to passively take this surplus value created by these workers selling this stuff and, put it towards yachts?
Horrible. Go ahead. Let's just see. Now, that's one thing. Kansas has a history of like populism and communism a little bit. If you go back, maybe socialism at the very least. Yeah. That's what's going on there. Let's go to the genuinely free state of Florida. And of course, before COVID.
Over in Florida that Republicans and conservatives are apparently fully
Sorry, just
supporting.
to get, if we can, the very tip of it, or beginning of his statement there, maybe they cut it off, but it says the government takeover in Florida that even Republicans aren't.
Government takeover in Florida that Republicans and conservatives are apparently fully supporting.
As Jonathan Sarai shows us, it involves an essential service in a small town.
Pause it. I should just say, she's got the exact same cadence as Tim Pool did in his thing, like in a small town. Go ahead.
When Baldwin, Florida's only grocery store closed, the mayor and city council decided to run their own market, a novel solution, especially for a conservative rural town.
This is definitely Red America, and a lot of Republicans in this area, and it never dawned on anybody to think about it being socialism, and we never had the intention of being that way. It's just pure necessity.
Especially for many elderly and poor residents who have limited access to transportation.
Yeah, the same thing.
Drive
Meats,
10 miles to the nearest fresh meats and produce.
We certainly don't see it as making a political statement. This is us looking out for ourselves, taking care of our own, the way I think it's supposed to be done.
As chain stores consolidate, industry analysts say serving remote areas is costly for an already low-margin business.
Pause it.
What is going on?
Why don't they mention crime?
What is going on with all those different fake brands?
Wow. Rice-A-Roni.
Independent grocers, who play a key role in small towns, have been declining in share over the past decade.
It is just increasingly difficult to find sole proprietorships, private entrepreneurs to come into town and take that kind of risk that grocery stores pose.
While residents in some food deserts have turned to co-ops or nonprofits, the city of Baldwin is running the store much like a public utility, where food is the basic resource.
The same as your water and sewer. We pull water out of the ground and we sell it to the customers, and the store's the same.
And city officials say they don't plan to stay in the grocery business indefinitely.
If a reputable entrepreneur wants to take over the store, they'll step aside. But until that need is met, the mayor is also the grocer.
Now,
Government takeover.
I can tell you that a reputable business entrepreneur has not stepped in to say, I will do that low margin business. So they are still doing it. And actually this summer, there was a boil water notice in Baldwin that the grocery store, they're really happy to have that grocery store because they're able to get water there during the boil water notice. So it really kind of saved the community, and it still is publicly owned and run for, like you say, the profits are reinvested back into the company.
I love the idea that like these people are so knee-jerk ideological that like, well, this isn't socialism. We're just taking care of our own. But you're taking care of our own through your government.
Yeah, well, that's where like socialists we need to be pushing the advantage and like helping people understand that actually, yeah, this is socialism. You're socialist.
Or let's just do this and just call it taking care of our ownism through governmentism. How about that?
But yeah, it's interesting that Tim Pool wasn't doing his Paul Revere ride about communism coming to the grocery stores when Baldwin, Florida, and Erie, Kansas decided to make theirs public. But Chicago starts talking about it, and all of a sudden, it's time for concern.
It's so weird that this dynamic that in rural areas and low-income areas that supermarkets are much riskier business.
Mm-hmm.
God, I wonder how much money Tim Pool made off of that video.
I just uploaded it. Yeah, just he had 147,000 views on it. So
there's at least 147,000 people who are just a little bit dumber today.
A little bit less able to understand how their community could feed themselves if the pinch comes. You know how
Tommy Tuberville has been blocking votes on seating members of our military, and he allowed the Joint Chiefs of Staff one, right, to go, and he voted against the guy. Who was the guy? Do we have a picture of the guy? I'm just curious who it was. Joint Chiefs of Staff. Tommy Tuberville, otherwise very, very sort of the type of guy you would think is very concerned about military preparedness. But he voted against this guy. What's his name? C.Q. Brown. Oh yeah, C.Q. Brown. There you go. There he is. Got a lot of medals on his chest. And let's find out why Tommy Tuberville voted against him.
I think he's got some woke policies. I like CQ. I've had him in my office several times back when he was chief of the Air Force. But
you voted against him.
He's a good person. He believes in what he's doing. You have to believe in what you're doing. Now he doesn't really have any authority other than giving advice to the president. He's a general, but he's not really over the Army, Air Force, Navy. He has to just give information and advice to the president. I think he'll do a good job, but I heard him say a few things that really didn't fit with me in terms of making our military better and better. You got to remember, we have a free country.
What was it, though, specifically, Senator?
Well, we have a free country. We have things that we need to do to make sure that we can uphold, and we can't do that without a great, hard, strong military. Now, I heard some things that he talked about race and things that he wanted to mix into the military. Let me tell you something. Our military is not an equal opportunity employer. We're looking for the best of best to do whatever. We're not looking for different groups, social justice groups. We don't want to single-handedly destroy our military from within. We all need to be one. It's like a football team.
Pause it. I'm sorry. Didn't we have this fight
Harry Truman
70 years ago, was it? It was about 70 years ago?
Yeah, I think, about that.
Something called forced integration of the military.
Yeah.
Was it 70 years ago or was it 80?
True. Yeah, I mean, now it was about 80.
80 years ago. And
yeah, like 75, 1948.
1948. All right, that was pretty close. 1948, we had forced integration of the military. And maybe, I guess that's when our military started to go down. Is that what he's talking about? He's been fighting this 70-year policy?
Yeah, the start of, the weak American military times.
It is, and let's be clear, we, particularly in the past couple of decades, will take just about anybody into the military. We were really relaxing standards during the Iraq War. The point is that we get more people when the economy is in a downturn. That's it. But
it's interesting how he, really against these wokeness and these social justice groups. But if you talk about white nationalists,
he gets very uptight about that.
Yeah,
that's just Americans. Continue on with this a little bit.
different groups, social justice groups. We don't want to single-handedly destroy our military from within. We all need to be one. It's like a football team I coach. You can't have different groups. Everybody's got to be together to win. There's no second place in war. And so I listen to all these generals and admirals, and we have some great ones. We have some great military people, but there's some in there that have a different agenda to make sure that they get their quotas in. And we're not a quota. This is a military that's...
But when you say race, Senator, can you tell us what you mean by? Are you talking about enhancing diversity at the Pentagon? What is it about race that bothers you about the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs?
Well, he came out and said we need certain groups, more pilots, certain groups to have an opportunity to be pilots. Listen, I want it to be on merit. I want our military to be the best. I want the best people. I don't care who they are, men, women. It doesn't make any difference. Catholics, Protestants. Hey, I want everybody to believe in the one goal that we have in this country for our military is to protect the taxpayers, to protect the United States of America. Don't give me this stuff about equal opportunity, because that's not what this military is about. Talk about making the best, training the best, and being the best of this world. Because if we're not, as I said earlier, there's no second place in war, and we live in a very dangerous place right now in terms of our foreign policy.
Okay, now you got to give the guy his due, because put up Tuberville's military service. This is a guy who's been there. He knows what he's talking about. Put up his military record, if you will, please, Bradley. He knows it's not about, mixing races and having groups be different pilots and all that stuff. It's not about that. Okay. Here it is. Tommy Tuberville's military. Where the heck is that?
There's his head coaching record. There's his accomplishments and honors. Are there any military ones in there? Or the SEC championship?
There's a lot of football.
Paul Bear Bryant award winner. Okay, good.
Oh, ESPN. And yeah.
I mean, training camp is a little bit like the military.
What is the percentage? Could you just Google this for me? What is the percentage of black people in the military relative to what it is in our population? Same with Latino. Because I'm going to suspect that it is not a woke project to say that we need to figure out a way of increasing the number of, let's say, pilots or whatever specialty jobs are in the military are from a broader section of the people who are in the military. Because otherwise we're going to have a problem. That would be what I would guess, just from a managerial thing.
There's not enough white people.
As far as I'm concerned, the best way to get to that parity would be to reduce our military and bring people back from bases. But that's not what he's talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, especially like the Air Force, which is I know colloquially as like having a big problem with evangelicalism and white supremacy. So I think that like this is clearly like the Pentagon trying to become a fighting force, and there's not enough like crazy white supremacists to stock up all the different branches with troops. And like you say, like it's disproportionately black because troops are coming from poor communities. So yeah, that's why they do it. It's not because they're trying to hit a quota. It's because they're trying to build a fighting force.
Exactly. Pretty stunning. This guy is saying this in public. Oh, incidentally, isn't he the senator from Alabama? Isn't that the state where the attorney general just said, like, hey, we're going to try and keep violating the Voting Rights Act at all costs, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, in terms of providing our 30% of our population with proper representation.
I wonder what he thinks of the Tuskegee Airmen being from Alabama.
Woke, super woke.
Or maybe it was good because they were segregated. I don't know.
I'm wondering, like, how, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Joe Biden's visit to the UAW, if this helps him in polls. I don't know if it will or not. It certainly makes me feel better about his presidency. I don't know which of the people who would supposedly run if he wasn't president would have done that. And again, make this clear. I don't care if he goes back and goes like, that was gross. I wish I'd never done that. I don't like shaking those people's hands. And frankly, I wouldn't have cared if he literally fell over while he was there. None of that was relevant to me. What was relevant, again, was that Sean Fain had 4 minutes unencumbered to deliver a great speech, show solidarity with teachers, with baristas, with writers, with actors, truck drivers, doesn't matter. Like, that helps the union movement. And that is an important institution that we need to rebuild. And, but one of the knocks on Joe Biden is that he has a lot of gaffes. Now, back when he ran in 2020, it wasn't an issue because people remembered the guy he was like a serial plagiarizer during his campaign.
Plagiarized Neil Kinnock famously. And
I think RFK. And again, like, I was no Joe Biden fan, and I thought that he would have no chance in the 2020 election. But the idea that, like, it's going to come down to his gaffes versus Donald Trump's gaffes is also sort of hilarious.
Seems a little bit 2010.
Exactly. Here is Jessica Tarlov. She is the lone non-lunatic on Fox News. And it's so funny to hear them like react to it because she sometimes she does a good job for this role of what she's doing there. She's no Alan Combs, with all due respect, late Alan Combs. She brings it.
But her presence in there is like when a fly gets into my apartment and the cats like have to freak out.
Exactly. This is what's pretty funny.
Based on what other world leaders and people in other countries think of America. But you said, okay, you don't need to watch him. Let's just hear what comes out of his mouth. And I put together some of Trump's latest cognitive beauties from the last 10 days. He said you need an ID to buy bread. Has anyone shown ID to get Wonder Bread lately? He said that he ran against Obama in 2016. He ran against Hillary Clinton. He warned that Biden will get us into World War II, which I'm pretty sure we already fought and won. And yesterday, he confused Jeb Bush and George W. Bush and said that Jeb got us involved in the Middle East. And then, of course, there are his authoritarian posts on Truth Social calling for the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to be executed and saying that he's going to investigate media companies that he doesn't like. You know, and can you imagine if Biden said, you know what, I'm going to look into that Fox News. They don't seem to like me over there.
This may be the choice that people have.
Yeah. Do we have any left?
No, I can see if I can find one.
Dana Perino. This may be the choice that people have. It's not me. Yeah, it is. But I don't think you're going to be presenting it that way. Do you want Donald Trump's blunders versus Joe Biden's blunders? I mean, honestly, they will not present it that way because they can't. Because largely speaking, if Joe Biden was 10 years younger, there would be nothing for them to talk about.
Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Let's hear where Dana Perino is going with this. Just give me the longer version there. Because there would be nothing else to talk to them about. All right, go ahead.
Remember when Biden said, I'm going to go take a nap or it's late. And Peter said that he was working to the wee hours of the night. He said he's held a complete schedule. And our perception around the world, by the way, is up since Biden came into
go forward a little bit so we can get just when it turns to Perino.
Lately, he said that he ran against Obama in 2016. He ran against Hillary Clinton. He warned that Biden will get us into World War II, which I'm pretty sure we already fought and won. And yesterday, he confused Jeb Bush and George W. Bush and said that Jeb got us involved in the Middle East. And then, of course, there are his authoritarian posts on Truth Social calling for the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to be executed and saying that he's going to investigate media companies that he doesn't like. And can you imagine if Biden said, you know what, I'm going to look into that Fox News. They don't seem to like me over there.
This may be the choice that people have.
Yeah.
Trump versus Biden. Laid bare here, Jesse.
At least Trump can say LL Cool J, Jessica.
Are you
in a prompter?
ID to buy bread.
Biden has to stay upright and Trump has to stay out of prison. Think about how ridiculous that is. That is the most corrupt and low expectation situation where Joe Biden has to not fall flat on his face to have a shot at re-election. And he promised us he would get us back to normal. But all he's worried about is making himself look normal. He's not worried about
we don't need to hear
inflation.
anymore. I like how he elides this whole thing. And Dana Perino gets her one sentence in there, and that's it. I mean, it's just
how to remain on the surface level with Jesse Waters.
Exactly. Although, let's play this clip. Yeah, this is interesting. Jesse Waters apparently, and I don't know what his numbers are. Well, the last time I checked, his number was doing pretty good. Oh yeah, I know he's putting on fake glasses. Those aren't real glasses, incidentally. Those are definitely not real glasses. Because when you get real prescription glasses, they would say, you're going to be on TV, you're going to want anti-glare.
Right, I was just thinking about that.
Like, I don't have anti-glare on these. A little bit.
Less glare than his, though.
Much less glare than his. And, but I think he wants to now appeal. He got and check out his ratings because I'd be curious. I assume that this leads me to believe that they're not doing well because he's trying to pivot away from his Bill O'Reilly impersonation that he's been doing to his Tucker Carlson impersonation. Because he's about to, and this is like, you want to talk about horseshoe, he's about to nail this on multiple fronts, except for when it comes to his conclusion. Because if you're talking about what the CIA has done in terms of destabilizing governments around the country, the world rather, I mean, and you get to the problem of immigration, and you do not mention that we effed up Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, among others. I mean, arguably, we tried it in Brazil. And have destabilized these countries in such a way that there is no civil society anymore that can provide for these people in the way they need to be provided, whether it's security or work or whatnot. Then you're leaving out a big thing. But this is interesting.
Tonight we're taking a look at America's most powerful agency, the CIA. What have they been up to lately? They're not fighting communism anymore. So what are they doing with the billions we give them?
Pause it. Incidentally, lately, communism, he's about 30 years late on this, incidentally, but go ahead.
CIA, when they're not keeping us safe, are moonlighting as corporate America's secret police. In 1953, a few years after the CIA was founded, they overthrew Iran's government. Why? Oil. The prime minister at the time told Western oil companies to get out of the country. Big Oil called the CIA, and the CIA started a coup and got rid of the prime minister and brought in someone a little more friendly. Same thing happened in Cuba. Fidel's biggest sin was killing corporate America. American companies lost hundreds of millions when Castro kicked out the casinos, hotels, and food companies. So the CIA uncorked the Bay of Pigs. After that failed, tried to assassinate Fidel for the next 60 years. And when the agency plays bushwhacker for multinationals, there's collateral damage. Like the southern border, 10,000 third world migrants march in every day, courtesy of the drug cartels, even planting their flags on our territory. Look at that. I think that's Venezuela.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to make something clear. This is not courtesy of the drug cartels. The drug cartels are not paying people to bring them up to the border. When we see the images of the caravans that they would play over and over again on Fox News. Like drug cartels that are bringing these people are choosing to leave their homes because it's unsafe.
Yeah.
Or because they can't put food on the table for their families, or they're leaving their families back there. There's no doubt, like, you have some drug cartels may run some smuggling routes, but chances are they're more interested in getting the drugs across than they are bringing families across.
Right. To the extent there's any
crossover,
it's because making a hardened border that regular people trying to get across hard, so people have to get around the police is basically a subsidy to the illegal.
He's so close because he's also trying to make the CIA as if they operate completely distinct of things like Iran-Contra, which was a Reagan policy, or the embargo that the Republicans want on Cuba. And all of these things are policies. Continue.
Border agents biting off cops' fingers. Oops. You're saying the CIA couldn't have put a stop to that? But migrants work for big American companies and keep wages low, while the cartels make billions and the CIA is nowhere to be found. Hector Bareilles is a former DEA agent and author of The Last Narc. So, Hector, what kind of relationship does the CIA...
But there's very little I would take issue with there, except for what the CIA could do relative to the cartels. It is quite possible that, and I would imagine, CIA is involved in some drug running as a way of getting off-book monies.
Yeah.
Although there's also just a ton of money that's hidden within the budget for the CIA. But why just make it about the CIA as if it's some type of rogue organization? How about let's talk about American policy? Let's talk about what the CIA did just, the 50th anniversary was 3 weeks ago with Allende. In fact, why not have AOC on? Because she was saying this on national television the other day.
Yeah. What's Jesse Waters' coverage of Venezuela been like? Has it been about different sorts of...
like a U.S. interference?
Yeah. I don't think I'll see if maybe I'm wrong. I don't really see it on the initial Google.
Is there a reason why Joe Biden just had to provide temporary protective status to tens of thousands of Venezuelans? It's because of all the damage we did to their economy. As a matter of policy.
Mark Weisbrot, I think, said it was 3 Great Depressions are sanctions on the oil industry there.
And we destabilized government after government in Central America. And there's only,
the CIA's woke. They want, I don't know.
They're so woke.
It's just interesting that these guys have to pretend. The content of their anti-imperialist, anti-CIA thing is BS. But I guess Alex Jones was kind of pretending this early on.
Of course. And the thing is, they'll make it this sort of narrow, detached from all the other policies that the CIA's operations are an extension of. These are all, when we talk about a strong military, it's the exact same thing. We don't need 800 some odd bases around the world, but to protect U.S. corporate interests, which is also what the CIA was operating under the exact same rubric.
But also, let's be real, the corporate interests aren't challenged by ICE. They actually like that because all the bosses that are running illegal immigrant labor like to have ICE there, because if that immigrant labor says, hey, maybe we should unionize.
That threat is always there. Yeah. They want that dynamic.
Simple phone call.
Right, and for example, the 70 years ago, the Iran, the CIA-backed Iran coup, that wasn't because of a rising threat of Iranian migration or concerns about autocracy. Mohammad Mossadegh was the democratically elected leader who wanted to nationalize
the oil companies.
Wanted to nationalize oil.
The oil reserves. They wanted to use their reserves for the. Yeah.
So Eisenhower was like, "No way, we have to get the Shah. Yep. We have to get the Shah back, or the Ayatollah back."
He's so close. All right, let's play this last one because this is pretty funny. This is how this works, folks. Hey, let's have our show meeting. We're going to send out a stringer to Seattle. We want to do a story on all the rampant crime there. So head out on the street, Bill, and get us some men on the street talking about how horrible the crime is. So Bill goes out on the street for a couple hours and comes back and he's like, you're not going to believe this. I couldn't find anybody who was complaining about it. What? Well, I couldn't find anybody. I tried. Honestly, I tried. What do you mean you tried? Where did you go? I just walked around downtown we were there for 3 hours and we couldn't find anybody. And we had to come back in because we got to get the package going. Well, we have an empty spot here. What are we going to do with it? Oh, I know. Let's make it about how deluded the people are in Seattle about not knowing that there's so much crime.
Jesse sent Johnny to the progressive hellscape where residents mocked the idea that the city is spiraling out of control.
I've never seen any crime in Seattle. I've never seen any of it. I've seen fun and laughter and fun.
I don't believe that number.
People, they're, getting robbed out here, carjacked.
I've never heard of anyone getting robbed.
Crime is a social issue that could be solved by giving people their basic needs.
It's not a thing that happens just on the street. People don't just come up and try to rob people on the street. Do you walk around every day like someone's going to rob me every second?
Seattle decriminalized drug use, and then they criminalized it again.
Oh my God, who are you getting these facts from? You're from New York. Apparently you're listening to the wrong people.
I saw a lot of people shooting up on my way down here.
Oh, did you? Okay. And they were bothering you?
I was in a car, but, people...
Oh, no, you're in a car. Oh, no, they were hurting you so bad. Oh,
no. That's all this is. And it's so interesting on TikTok or Instagram to watch these people that they're clearly never in a city except in a car, and they'll drive past one of these areas where there's a lot of unhoused people and take a video out of the slow moving car and be like, look at what's happening to the city. It's like
I had this conversation. Remember, I went on that Nation cruise. And I went off the boat and went on some food tour or something, and there was a lot of people not on the Nation cruise. In fact, I was the only person there, and I ate, had a couple of drinks with this couple. They seemed, nice. I mean, they were, I think, conservatives, and they were from, I think, Portland. And they're like, oh, we love New York, but we wouldn't go there now. And I'm like, why?
Literally safer than it's ever been in your lifetime.
It's like, why? You can find, because you have maybe a 6% better chance of getting a Broadway ticket, maybe, or something what? Why? Why wouldn't you go there now? And they thought, from everything they had heard, that it was like a hellscape.
Yeah. No, I whenever I call home and call especially my parents get it now because but my grandparents would be like, yeah, is it do you still walk to work? Are you getting mugged? You dodging assault attempts? And it's no, it's a city. There's a lot of people here, and with a lot of people you get higher crime numbers than say North Dakota. But if you look at per capita, these cities are way more safe than say cities in the South, like Memphis or Omaha, even those places have a lot higher crime rates than a place like New York.
Yeah, it's crazy. But that's pretty funny. I love how the fact that they had to we have to run the package.
They couldn't find enough to edit those people out and then run with the people.
Right,
who
where they're just making it look how deluded they are.
Yeah.
They don't even know what's going on in their own city. Residents in blue cities are embracing the decay, it said. All right, folks, we'll take some IMs and then get out of here. Sorry, didn't have time for calls. Cannot believe we did not get out of here early because we got to get this is the first show of the day for us. We're doing multiples. Frank Bluntz, I'm sure Tim Pool has a lot to say about the quality of sushi at these grocery stores. George from Belgium, regarding discussion about the news coverage of the strikes. Gore Vidal's book about the 1920s Hollywood details how the major newspapers of the day, as well as the burgeoning movie industry, were virulently anti-communist, anti-union, anti-strike. All the major sources of information and entertainment were owned by the elite Democratic and Republican whose views got chugged out as propaganda. Saul Cedar, hello, fresh is fat pig approved. I didn't even hear what Saul called me that. I've honestly blocked it out. Brennan from Kentucky. Puree some capers and shallots and combine that with some butter when you start those Brussels sprouts for that lemon pasta. Fierce Deity. The hospitality union going on strike. The one Bro Flamingo is a member of. Hope you can call in if it is. Brooklyn's Best. Sam, I'm a new subscriber. Love the show. Who wins the debate tonight? Vivek, Meatball Ron, Bergamot, Go C Team. I don't think there is a winning of this debate, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think, like, who would be the nominee if Donald Trump kicks over? We'll talk about that tonight. Professional dumpster fire.
Obviously.
I don't think the guy's on that stage.
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, yeah, that's an interesting point, yeah.
Professional dumpster fire. MR Crew, happy Wednesday. I don't know if you covered the headlines, but there were protests held by some activist orgs in Philly last night. Held a protest and march to demonstrate judges' dismissal of charges against Philly police officer Mark Dial after he performed an extrajudicial killing of Eddie Izzare in Kensington last month. We did not cover that. And yes, I watched the body cam footage, and it's amazing. You hear the cop comes out of the car. He shot the guy within 7 seconds. First of all, like, the way that cop came out of the car seemed completely batcrap crazy to me. You're holding the gun, and he yells, "I'm going to shoot you." Less than a second later, he pulls the trigger. It's amazing. I don't know how those charges can be dismissed, but I imagine I don't know. Al Conniption. Matt, Lillard trade is done.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, on the 10th of December in 2022, I said, this GQ video on YouTube from 2 days ago feels like Lillard may get traded to Milwaukee. I said, 2 different times he mentions wanting to play with Giannis, and the answer to will you remain a Blazer is less definitive than I remember it being on, say, JJ's podcast, and it turns out that he is traded to Milwaukee, so... Look at me.
Al Conniption, remember when pro-abortion Texas Democrat Congressman Henry Cuellar was raided by the FBI for his ties to Azerbaijan? Remember when Nancy Pelosi stumped for him on the campaign trail? Right. Yep. I mean, that was basically what our guest was basically saying. They just poured money into corrupt politicians. Vermont Ben should have someone on to talk about Moldova and the Russian influence and occupation of Transnistria. New Hampshire and Vermont has state-run liquor apparatus within private wine, beer retailers. Pennsylvania also has liquor state-run stores. Sam Only Fan. Oh, this is way too long, but there's a movie about release commemorating the 50th anniversary of Yom Kippur War, centered around and seemingly aiming to whitewash then Prime Minister Golda Meir. On this occasion, I'm reminded that much before Netanyahu was the right-wing government in Israel, it was Golda Meir, supposedly from the Zionist left, with the Labor Party, who said there's no such thing as Palestinians. That's why many Palestinians don't really differentiate between the right, left, or center in Israel, as they're all part of the same racist Zionist ideology. Good point. I mean, it makes sense to me. I think that is even more dramatically more homogenous today. Juneteenth is my Independence Day. As explained by Dr. Sara in an interview, whether international or domestic to the U.S., extreme wealth, extreme ownership like billionaires cause despair that leads to death and wars. Yes. All right. 5 more. Jenna from St. Louis. The Walmart brand is a great value, not good value. Barnes & Noble is not gone. This guy's a total idiot. Yes, he is. El Guapo. Why do I get the feeling Dems are allowing a shutdown? Is this some twisted belief it will slow the economy and cure inflation? The Dems don't have the ability to do. In fact, they're doing everything they can, and I think some of it I am not going to like, frankly. But what they're trying to do is they've passed this measure in the Senate. They are hoping that the House, and they're probably back-channeling to McCarthy, saying, get the FAA authorization past that. That goes to the Senate. The Senate adds on to this FAA authorization, this must-pass bill, in the sense that, like, even like the Freedom Caucus guys don't want the airlines to shut down. They'll attach a continuing resolution and they will punt this until, what was it, a 3-week continuing resolution?
It would be till
6 week.
Yeah, it would be till like mid-November. Like
6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 week. Okay, and that's what's going to happen. The Dems, the reason why you have that feeling is because you've been listening to conspiracy theorists too much. What will likely happen is they're going to put stuff in that continuing resolution that is going to end up like cutting stuff. And that you can get pissed about, that they're not holding their ground enough. But it's the government shutting down is a bad situation. Maryland socialist, Donald Trump going to miss tonight's debate because he'll be joining the assembly line in Detroit, helping true Americans work for a living, unlike Joe Brandon, who's quiet quitting as president and joining other strikers not working. John from Omaha, why are Honeycrisp apples the most expensive apples at the grocery store? Because they're probably the highest in demand relative to to their production this year. Here's the little dirty secret about Honeycrisp. They need to be sprayed more than a lot of other apples, which means that they're more sensitive to things like blight, weather problems. Snapdragon's better. Val Shells. Have you seen Brianna Wu's leaked DMs? She's in a pretty transphobic group chat. I have not. I have no awareness of that whatsoever. Left Reckoning. May John Brown's spirit guide you. Really cool. Stores have been closing everywhere since the pandemic started. Not a new phenomenon since Chicago's been elected. Who, by the way, won running on the WFP line. All right, 2 more. Cogman. The business model of the Dollar General is to just have one brand of peanut butter. And the final IM of the day, Worcester Ice Cats, kindly requesting a show far from my dad's birthday. A Libra King finally started listening to the show. Worcester Ice Cats dad, happy birthday. We will be back at about 8:45 p.m. tonight with live coverage of the debate. Bradley, Matt, great job for the first half of the day today. We'll see if you can keep it up. Emma will be back with us. All right, folks, we'll take some IMs, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see you soon.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know